Hello. Welcome to this special summer episode of Can We Talk? Great to see you guys.
You too.
Good to see you.
We are right smack in the middle of summer, so it feels really fitting that today we are going to talk about a new movie called The Floaters that is set at a Jewish summer camp. We're going to have a little conversation, the three of us first, and then we are very excited to have Shai Korman, one of the film's producers, join us for the conversation. So, if you are a camp person, this movie will definitely have some elements that resonate. So, maybe we should start by talking a bit about our own camp experiences, if we had them, our kids' experiences, and what aspects of the movie we thought fit or didn't fit with our own camp lives. Nahanni, do you want to start?
Sure. I was not a Jewish summer camp kid. I was a classical music kid, so if I ever did go to camps, it was camps that were built around that, so very different kind of culture. But my kids have gone to Jewish summer camps for years and are actually there right now, and my daughter loves it so much that she's in her second year as a counselor. So she's on the other side of that, creating that special magic that is Jewish summer camp. And I think that the camp that they go to is actually very much like Camp David, the camp in the floaters. There's that whole familiar lexicon of kind of Hebrew campish terms like the marp and rikud and all of the rhythm of the week, like the all camp Havdalah service and the moshing that happens afterwards. I also like definitely recognized in the kind of lifelong friendships between the two main female characters in the movie who had met at summer camp and then find themselves back on staff at their same summer camp. Like, I hope my kids have that. I think they have made great friends at summer camp. So yeah, the film was clearly made by people who are very steeped in that kind of camp culture, and I appreciated that they didn't try to water that down.
Yeah, who are very steeped in it and also clearly love it. Like
Love
there
it,
was so
right?
much love, I
Yeah,
think, in this
Yes, I
movie.
felt like it was like a love letter to Jewish camp.
Yeah.
Definitely.
yeah.
Nahani, I was surprised. I'm surprised to hear that you were not a Jewish camp kid. I definitely would have pegged you for a Jewish camp kid. So, although I can see the
I wa-
classical music.
I was all about the cello. It was all
Yeah,
about
yeah,
like
you kind
chamber
of have to
music
pick.
and
Yeah.
going into cabins in the woods to rehearse string
Did you ever
quartets.
go to Interlochen?
I didn't go, but I thought about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, my camps were more like New England based.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You either are going to get the general Jewish camp experience, or if you are really focused on something like sports or music or theater, then you're going to have probably a different experience. I was a Jewish camp kid, went to a Jewish camp for several years, and then the same camp as a counselor. And it wasn't like Camp David in a lot of ways because it was huge.
Mm.
And Camp David felt like nice and cozy and small, like the kind of camp where everyone knows everyone, and that definitely wasn't my camp. I grew up in a huge Jewish community, and it was very siloed. So I grew up in Montreal, where things were very siloed by like level of observance and Ashkenazi versus Sephardi. Like we have a really big Sephardic Jewish community, but literally like tend to go to different schools. I think it's changing a little bit, but certainly when I was growing up, different schools, different camps, also by level of observance. So the more observant kids would go to different camps. So
Hmm.
my camp was Jewish and it was kosher, but some of the attention to things in the movie about kashrut, like I don't think we're taken quite as seriously at our camp. And yeah, the kids at my camp, I would say, were mostly like secular Ashkenazi kids. So it didn't feel nearly as pluralistic as Camp David or as
Hmm.
diverse. It
Hmm.
felt much more homogenous. I sort of enjoyed that about the film, the camp that's portrayed in the film, is sort of like catering to lots of different kinds of Jews. I mean, there were certain details that just I think are pretty universal to Jewish camp that like felt very familiar to me, like some of the cheers and chants, and like you said, like the names for things being in Hebrew, that kind of
Hmm.
thing.
The Gaga pit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. Right. There's some constants across
Yeah.
Jewish camps. And like, but my kids, in contrast, have gone to the same small Jewish camp in southern Indiana for many years. And in some ways, their camp is more similar to Camp David. It's like it's very small and cozy, and I guess because it's like draws on smaller Jewish communities, it's kind of more of a big tent where there's Jewish kids from a lot of different backgrounds. So I think it felt like there was more overlap between like my kids' experience and what I saw in the film. I actually would like for them to see it, kind
Yeah.
of weigh in on what resonated and what didn't.
Yeah, I was hoping that when my daughter was home for a day off from camp where she's a counselor, that she was going to watch it with me, but the timing did not work out. And when she's home,
Those
she
days
has like
off are very in and
there's a
out.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot of priorities. So this movie was actually filmed at my camp.
No.
Yes,
That's
it was very
crazy.
funny because I was watching it and I was like, God, the Beit Am looks exactly like the Beit Am at Tel Yehuda. But I was
So
like,
you
that's
didn't
at
know
first I
that
was like,
going
that's so
into
I didn't
it.
know it going into it, and I was like, God, it looks so familiar. And I was like, I guess a Beit Am looks the same. It has the plaques, like it's not so distinctive. And then at some point in the middle of the film, first of all, I recognized an extra in it who I know goes to Tel Yehuda now, so a friend of my daughter's. So I was like, okay, they clearly were filming at Tel Yehuda and had campers like in the background. As extras. And then also on one of the walls, you see this like graffiti, mural that says Tel Yehuda. So I was like, okay. And then of course at the end, I
That's so
looked at the credits,
fun.
but
You didn't
um,
find your name on one of the paintings in
I
the
didn't.
background?
I mean, I will say the last summer that I went, I did not go there all the way through. My family moved around and we also spent a lot of summers in Israel because my mom was a historian and doing research. So I wasn't like one of those kids who went to the same, like the kids who are in some of the kids in the movie who like have gone there for 10 years, or like my daughter has gone to her camp for 10 years and has been a counselor for 2 years. I kind of was at different camps at different times, depending on where we were living and what fit into our travel schedules. But the last summer that I was there was actually, this feels shocking to me, but the last summer I was there, I think was in 1988. So that was really a long time ago. They've probably had several generations of removing the plaques and putting up new
Right.
ones since then. But yes, I also felt there were a lot of things that still felt unchanged. I mean, the music for Rikud is a little bit more modern now than it was then, and I loved the Hakshivu Hakshivu Na over the what do you even call that system of
PA
the PA
system.
system, which
Yeah.
which I was asking my daughter about that at Ramah where she goes, and she said they don't use that anymore, which I guess now people, because counselors have cell phones or whatever, or maybe they have other systems that
I feel
they're not like
walkie-
They have
announcing
these
things.
walkie-talkies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
walkie-talkies seem
walkie-talkies,
to
yeah.
be
So they
big.
don't
Yeah.
announce things in the same way. But that made me think about sort of what elements of camp are, how much of camp is about in some ways that nostalgia, and the movie is clearly also trying to provoke that. I mean, and I think that's part of the movie. Like Nomi and Mara are kind of constantly talking about what camp meant for them and then wanting to create that experience for other kids. And, what are the things that kind of are standard across the years of those kinds of intense friendships and the opportunity that camp provides to be somebody a little bit different from who you are during the year at school, or have different kinds of friends, and also a place where being Jewish can be really cool. Because I think for a lot of kids, that is not a part of their experience during the year. It's something that might set them apart, or that just, doesn't feel like what is cool. And then at camp, the kids who are really into it are often the cool kids. And we saw that in this movie. The kids who weren't into it were kind of the losers. They
Yeah.
weren't like, oh, I'm too cool for this, and so that makes me cool. Uh, so that was kind of interesting. But, I think I also appreciated that the movie was acknowledging changes in the Jewish community in the 21st century. So, you have a more diverse mix of campers, and there's one scene at the end where they're sort of talking about that, like, I'm Asian, I'm queer, and I'm Jewish. And that was definitely not part of my camp experience in the 80s. But I also feel like that nostalgia piece, like one of the things that I recognized about my camp experience after the fact was that what I was taught at my, socialist Zionist summer camp was sort of an ideology that was like already kind of out of date by the time I was there. And certainly culturally, like when I lived in Israel, my Israeli friends would laugh at me because they were like, culturally, you are basically my grandmother. Like the songs that you know and the dances that you know, like I don't know the
Actually,
words to those
yeah, there's
songs. Like,
one song that I mean, I don't know that it's a song they wouldn't know, but it seemed pretty old school. In the floaters, there's a moment where they're dancing to Loa
have to
Hafti,
die. Yeah.
and I
Hmm.
thought that was like that's old school. That's like a really old school like Israeli sort of patriotic folk song
Yeah.
that I was like, and then they shifted into the more modern stuff. But
Right.
yeah, I was like, oh,
When
we're
I was
still
at camp, it
dancing
was
to
more
that.
like yo-yo was like the newer, hipper kind of dance.
That
But
yes, that
but
was.
all the sort of like, the quieter songs like the old folk songs, which I knew like multiple verses of from camp. And my Israeli friends were like, how do you know all the words to this? Like you could go. And I remember once being at a youth hostel um, in Israel and like someone took out an accordion or something, like an old person, and people were sitting around and singing. And it was like me and people in their 90s, and we knew all the same songs. So that is kind of, I think that's kind of a funny piece of camp, like how it preserves parts of culture in amber in some ways. And yeah, I don't know. So it was interesting to see them sort of both doing that and sort of also trying to play with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Was there a particular scene from the movie that struck you or that stayed with you?
So actually, that like we've mentioned Rikud a few times. So just for people who don't know, it's like common at Jewish summer camps, and in I think at Camp David, the camp in the film, it's like after Havdalah. So when Shabbat ends, they transition into like doing dancing, like sort of some tradition, more kind of traditional-ish. Israeli folk dancing, and then moving into more like Israeli pop music, and everyone's just kind of dancing around. And I think this is like pretty common at Jewish summer camps. What stuck with me about it wasn't so much that like my camp actually didn't have anything exactly like that. My kids do, but mine didn't. It's just what was striking about it is that like I found it actually surprisingly moving. Like there's just this moment where all the kids are like really engaged in the dancing and just like really exuberant and joyful, and they've spent the first part of the movie kind of highlighting these social hierarchies and differences between the kids and who feels it's called the floaters because some kids feel like they're on the outside, right? But in this moment, like those differences don't seem to matter and all the kids are kind of equally engaged and no one is like too cool for that moment. And I found that kind of moving. I mean, partly as like a moment of Jewish joy, which, the last few years have been rough. And so I think when I see those moments that they mean more than they used to. And I think also the moment of Jewish representation, I think because I'm not used to seeing like such a specifically Jewish experience portrayed in a movie. And there was just like I just found myself sort of getting almost a little teary at like, oh, this thing that like is very particular to like my sort of I guess whether me personally or my larger group is being shown in this moment. It was just really nice.
So I have two that I was thinking about. One is just a kind of scene that I thought was pretty hilarious, which is, and it's not even the point of the scene. It's kind of more the backdrop for the scene. But there's this ice cream sundae making contest, which is based around Israel geography, where kids are supposed to create maps of Israel out of ice cream decorations. And I think at some point, one of the judges comments that, like, one of the borders isn't in exactly the right place. Um, or somebody says, "Oh, have you solved the conflict?" In ice
In
cream.
ice cream.
Um, and I thought that was pretty hilarious and like a nod to the fact that Israel education could be such a sticking point, even at summer camp, which is just supposed to be, fun. But my daughter did confirm to me that over the course of her life, she has had to create elements of Israeli geography out of food at least half a dozen times. And we could probably have a whole long conversation about the
Yes.
pedagogy of that, but let's not. So the scene that I thought was really sweet was the moment where all the floaters kind of come together and start seeing each other as people and kind of leave the teenage snarkiness, which has been established, very well established in the first part of the movie. They leave that behind. They start working together as a team. And that happens out in the middle of the woods around a campfire. And I really love the idea that that kind of thing happens in a natural setting where kids are exposed to the elements and kind of are able to let their guard down a little bit more. And I think some summer camps take advantage of their natural setting, maybe probably more than others in that regard, but it is one very wonderful thing about sending our kids out into the middle of the woods if they don't normally live in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. I was also very struck by that Israel ice cream geography thing, because that also struck me as like so real.
And absurd.
And absurd, completely absurd. And made me think about something else absurd, which wasn't represented, but I felt like was maybe a missed opportunity, is that one of the funny things about, American Jewish summer camp is like the only holiday that happens over the course of the summer is Tisha B'Av, which actually we were recording this on Erev Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is a commemoration of the destruction of the temples, and like it becomes a kind of commemoration and mourning for like all destruction that's happened to the Jewish people. So at camp so camps did, like, it's a really unfortunate holiday to happen. And one of my best friends is South American. And so their camp holiday was actually Hanukkah, not Tisha B'Av, which sounds way better. But it leads to all kinds of funny things. Like, they for sure should have had a scene where on a rainy day or on Tisha B'Av, everyone was sitting around watching Holocaust movies or movies about Entebbe. We definitely watched the movie of Entebbe at camp. And I will say, like, I would say pre-90s, when I think camps got a little bit more aware of liability, and also people became more aware of sort of like, don't traumatize your campers. Camps did all kinds of really nutty things, like reenactments of hostages and like other kinds of stuff. At my camp, I literally, I need to find someone to corroborate this, because I remember this so clearly, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, this can't have been real. But our camp was in an area where that was known to have a big KKK community.
Oh, wow.
And to kick off, how camps like to do a lot of these things where they sort of kick off something with some kind of like reenactment thing. They had counselors come running in and say, the camp has been surrounded and taken over by the KKK, and like everybody like rush into the Beit Am, like we have to lock down this whole thing. And then it became revealed this was just like a way to kick off Tisha B'Av celebration, to like, what would it have been like to be whatever, which like obviously now that is bonkers to consider that a camp would do this, but everyone was like, people burst into tears and thought it was real and were crying.
God, that's
and
crazy.
I have heard so many stories like that where, there were years and years. A friend told me of a story at a Jewish camp in the South where for years and years they had some kind of like reenactment of like a cross burning that had happened many years before at the camp, and until someone was like, this maybe is like slightly problematic. So I think camps don't do those kinds of things. I hope they don't do.
Well, in this movie, I mean, they do have the rival Jewish camp, right?
That
which
breaks
kind of breaks in and like almost does a pogrom in their camp, like paintballs and shouting nasty stuff. And I was like, that maybe they were thinking this is a way we could
more benign.
Slightly more benign version of that.
Yeah,
it's funny when you brought up Tisha B'Av. I thought you were going to say something much more mundane, which is at my camp, my memory of Tisha B'Av was that it was the moment where suddenly a lot of people became observant. So, there weren't a lot of observant kids at the camp, but it was a way, if you were inclined to be we did not have a camp like at the floaters at Camp David where you could just opt out of activities because you didn't feel like doing them and you were too cool for them or whatever. But on Tisha B'Av, if you said, I'm observing Tisha B'Av, then if
You
you
could
were
get out of
inclined to,
swimming. You could,
be
right?
in your sweatpants all day, you could do
Right.
that. And it also meant you had to fast.
Right.
So, trade-offs, but for some people that maybe was worth getting out of going in the lake.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my Tisha B'Av memory.
We also in the 80s there was a lot of burning things down, like a lot of like creating those signs that you then set on fire so the words light up, which again, I think for liability issues they realized that's really just not safe and kind of dumb, but that was definitely like a camp thing that was done.
It's just not as fun anymore out in the
Yeah.
world.
No, I think part of the issue is that in the age of social media and cell phones, like parents know too much about what's happening at camp, and
And
there were
parents are
definitely
too involved.
they're
There's
too
too much sort of
involved.
reporting back,
Yeah,
and the camp has to cater to the
exactly.
parents as opposed to sending
Right.
your kid off and being like, we'll hear from you in a month. Have a great
Right.
time.
There was just a lot that happened at camp that parents didn't know about, and that was probably for the best.
Yeah. Well, we are so lucky to have one of the producers, Shai Korman, joining us for a conversation today.
Shai.
Hey, how are
Hello,
you?
Shai. How are
Can you?
you?
Hi.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you. Tell us where your sisters are, because you're part of a three sibling team.
So, yeah, I produce with my two amazing sisters, Becky and Lily, and they co-created The Floaters, and they co-created um, a new movie that we're working on that is shooting in about a week, starts shooting about a week, and they are deep into pre-production meetings, VFX meetings, and budget meetings, and script meetings in the Canary Islands, which is where we're shooting our next movie. So,
Cool. Well, we will definitely want to hear more about that. But let's start with The Floaters, which we really enjoyed and was just like a great summer flick. Um, and I was thinking a lot. Whenever there's a movie that's really Jewy, I am very excited and also a little nervous because it can be tricky. And whenever there's popular cultural representations of Jews, there's a tendency for certain stereotypes to come up, and sometimes some work really tries to subvert or play with those stereotypes in creative ways, and sometimes it reinforces them, and sometimes it means to do one and it accidentally does the other. So I'm curious how you thought about that in the way that you approach the film, particularly, I guess, from the Jewish Women's Archive perspective for the female characters. But how did you think about how to represent Jews in all of their fullness, and also, you know, grapple with some of the caricatures that are out there?
sure. Well, you're hitting on what was the impetus for making this movie. My sisters and I are really students of pop culture and Jewish representation. And there's a specific element that we have really been obsessed with for the past, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. And that is the way Jewish women are represented, but also specifically the way Jewish women are represented and cast in film and in television. And so I know it's always funny to hear the brother of the trio be the first one to say this, but I always say that if anyone ever had anything nice to say about me or call me a mensch, I always give the credit to all the Jewish women in my life. And the starting point for Floaters was we want to show Jewish women represented on screen in a more authentic and complex way to reflect the women that raised us. And that's women at camp, that's women at work, that's our mother, our sisters, aunts. And so that was number one. That was, in fact, I mean, before we had a story, we said, we got to make a movie where this is it, and we're going to cast the women with Jewish actors.
Yeah.
And then we thought about, well, where could this take place and what would this be about? And we had a bunch of deep conversations along with the first writer of the script, Brent Hoff, who also gets huge credit for the story development. We met with like 20 Jewish women in our lives that we considered leaders. And that's everything from people who work at Jewish institutions to school principals to our surrogate mother in Israel who lives on a moshav, and her daughters. And what we got to the core of was that making community was the thing that was consistent across all of this. And so when we were thinking about where and how we could demonstrate this, and demonstrate it in a way where the story would be inexorably Jewish. You got to write what you know, and we know Jewish summer camp. We spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
And so it started with Jewish women and wanting to combat stereotypes, and I can dive deeper into all of that. But when we realized, okay, well, you have to have a way of doing this, and a story and a place, and Jewish summer camp was the perfect place to do it. So
Yeah. And the way that you create Camp David is it really is run by women, basically. I mean, you have the character of Steve Gutenberg, Steve Gutenberg's character, but he's sort of, it's clear he's kind of like an old timer and not really with it as much anymore.
yeah, he's I mean, and he's based on a real character, and this isn't to say there aren't men in the hierarchy.
Sure,
Jeff,
sure.
Jeff, the assistant director, is of course there. But yeah, he's from a different era, and he captures. I mean, everyone in the movie. What's something that I think people, hopefully people catch on. I think a lot of people catch on to is that. Yeah, there are villains in this movie, but not really. Everybody loves camp, and everybody loves the place, and has their thing that they're contributing to. But in our case, the women are the ones that are running the show for sure. Rabbi Rachel was always Rabbi Rachel. Mara and Nomi's relationship and their friendship was always core to the story that we were telling. And then Nomi mentoring Jonah, played by the great Judah Lewis, was also an important element because, I don't have any numbers to back this up, but we wanted to show a Jewish woman mentoring a young man. You always see like, Good Will Hunting, it's a dude mentoring a dude. Star Wars, dude mentoring a dude, or dude mentoring a young woman. And that's not reflective of my life experience. So we really wanted to show that.
Yeah.
And then the Jewishness. Oh, you talked about the Jewiness. That's such a Jewish thing to say, is that you get nervous about it.
Right.
Because we were, I would say, almost like relentless in our desire to represent the Jewishness as authentically as possible to what we lived in, the world we came from, so that at the very least we could stand on everything. In burying the spoons, we had we're not Orthodox, but we definitely had a little potted plant where if you mixed up the milk and meat dishes in our house, my mom took the fork and jammed it in the potted plant, and you didn't see it for a month.
Yep, same.
And there's the jokes about kashrut, but the jokes about kashrut are buttoned by the very important spoon scene, as we call it, the burying the spoon scene, where Lindsay, played by the incredible Nina Bloomgarden, reminds or explains to Jonah that, like, well, you might think this is medieval, but this is how we make room for everybody in our community. And so that concept of Klal Yisrael, can I drop the Hebrew stuff on this podcast?
Yeah.
Klal Yisrael and pluralism between different Jews is not only the top of our mind for floaters, but it's really a core element of the kind of work that we want to be involved in.
It's really obvious that the people who made this movie were very steeped in the Jewish summer camp experience. Just all the little details that are woven throughout the movie, whether it's like the Hebrew phrases, the like hakshivu hakshivuna and Sheket bevakasha and everything. And we were talking before, the three of us, about the Rikud, like all the Israeli dancing that is such a mainstay of a lot of Jewish summer camps. And so in some ways it feels like the movie is definitely playing to people who have had that experience. And like, if you know, and that's one of the like delightful things about it. But then I also imagine you're thinking about your wider audience too. And so what do you hope that a wider audience who maybe doesn't have that experience is going to get from the film?
So this is a funny experience that we've had, which is people always squinting their faces and say, this is very niche, or who is this for? Mm-hmm. And so it is for everybody. But we were very honest with ourselves and honest with every single person involved that for this movie to work, it had to resonate with the people that it was about. And I don't think that's unique to Jews. I think the most successful culturally specific work we've seen that inspires me, that's in every possible, from every possible background, whether it's Never Have I Ever or Lady Parts, which is on Peacock, or Reservation Dogs, which I hold as like the highest possible masterpiece when it comes to doing authentic, a show that resonates with its own community. I think when you do that, and you get that specificity, it's totally universal. And the other thing I would say is that I've been saying this a lot because we get this question at every Q&A is like, you don't have to be a hobbit to get Lord of the Rings. And I think that with Jews we worry a little bit about, oh, is it too Jewish? Are people going to get it? Like, that's our own dialogue that we have to get over a little bit. And I think there's a movement of Jewish filmmakers right now that are really interested in going beyond that. We have a motto. We have two mottos in our company from a creative standpoint, and one of them is the Jewishness should be funny, but it shouldn't be the butt of the joke. And the other one is that our characters evolve with their Jewishness, not in spite of it.
Mm. Wait, what do you mean by that?
Meaning, our character. So you'll see in a lot of sort of two-dimensional or one-dimensional representations of Jews, the defects in their character are the Jewish stereotypes. Oh, they're neurotic and they have to get over being neurotic. They have a relationship with their mom and they got to get over that. In our case, knowing Torah, the values of community, the values of discussion, debate, which are integral to Jewish life and history. I mean, the word Yisrael, right, means to wrestle with God. Those are all things that bring our characters on their journey. There's the moment where Nomi hears from Nomi, played by Jackie Tone, of course, and Rabbi Rachel, played by Aya Cash, delivers her the famous Simcha Bunim quote. And applies it to camp, but it's a very Jewish concept, this idea that I'm both dust and ashes and the world were made for me. And so we celebrate that because that's how we were raised. Now, it doesn't mean we can't do funny stuff and have, a good kosher joke or a good circumcision joke or a very, very outlandish recreation of the Sodom and Gomorrah story. We love all of that stuff. We want all of that stuff, but we are always asking ourselves how we can, even the Sodom and Gomorrah story, like, ultimately, right? There's one interpretation of this movie that it's really just about making a minion. That was actually one of the things we talked about a lot while we were writing, which was like, on one level, this movie is about 10 people coming together and finding their community in those 10 people. But in reality, there's only 8 floaters, and then there's Nomi, because writing a script is very hard with 10 main characters.
We'll give you a little leeway for that one.
Yeah, but the concept is there. You can throw Mara in or Rabbi Rachel; they're part of the minion too.
Exactly.
One could argue that
you can always count the Torah.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
And Yoni and Evan, our villains, they're part of the community too. They're rocking out in Rikud, and doing the Havdalah blessings.
Right.
So you clearly wrote this created this film out of a lot of love for summer camp, and your relationship with your siblings seems, I'm guessing that you all went to the same camp. Is that right?
So we went to Camp Tel Yehuda where the movie was shot.
I did too, actually.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. That's great. And my parents met there.
Wow.
And my daughter was there this summer for her second summer, and all the other kids are in the junior camps right now. So yeah, we're, it's a huge part of our life. And it also, just to make sure doesn't sound as virtuous, our mother is in fact the board chair of Tel Yehuda right now. So all of the jokes about the board chairs and the donors and everything, like, that's all us making fun of ourselves.
Great. Did you, Shai, particularly identify with one of the characters in the film?
Two.
Okay.
We all have the couple that so I'll start with the funniest answer, which is the Dahlias are my sister Lily. They are 100%. We needed 2 characters to play Lily, which is an absolutely super cool kid that everybody loves, that is just there to hang out with her friends and do things on her own schedule. The Dahlias, that's their thing. They're like,
Those were the 2 girls who dress the same.
yeah.
Yeah.
Becky
And they're in the
Zarnos,
floaters.
Chili and
They're
Jordan.
part
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
floaters.
They're part of the
Yes, but
floaters,
they're
but they're
kinda
not part of the
cool.
floaters because they're nerds. They're super
Right.
cool. They're just,
Yeah.
they're like, I'm not doing Maccabia. Ew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my sister. And then I identify a lot with Mara, the camp director. I was definitely the like leadership guy, trying to make people happy, keep things on the rails character. I was a program director and a unit head at camp and all of that. And then I also, as a camper, I identify a lot with Lindsay, Nina Bloomgarden's character, the sort of like goody who loves camp and wants to be there and maybe does the right thing to the point of it hurting themselves. And so I identify a lot with her as well. I think that's a really cool character. She's always been really inside my head.
So you mentioned at the top that you produced this film along with your 2 sisters and that the 3 of you are working on another project now. Can you give us a sneak peek about what that project is about?
Okay, so what I can say is that it's a horror comedy with some deep Jewish themes. I don't think anything like it's been done before. It has a killer cast, an amazing director, but that's all I can say right now. Because
Cool.
It's just about to go into shooting, but it's going to be really special, and it's a different genre movie, but those tenets of the Jewishness being funny and not the butt of the joke, and so it'll be very much from our style, but it's totally different genre of movie, which is I think apparently according to the movie industry not the best strategy, but I don't know.
I don't know. Ryan Coogler's done that, so
You know what? If I can one day be worthy of of carrying his coffee, that would be more than enough. But that's a perfect example of a great artist who is making stuff that is deeply specific that resonates with everybody.
Yeah, totally.
And so those are a lot of my heroes, are folks like that.
So before we let you go, where can people find more information about the floaters and find out about where to see it?
Okay, so floatersmovie.com is where you go. We are constantly releasing more screenings, which is great. We had our theatrical premiere in New York and LA. We had a bunch of sold out shows. That has created tremendous momentum. The best place to see is floatersmovie.com. The other thing is that when you get there, there's a little pop-up where you can sign up for our newsletter, and that is where you get some really cool stuff before everybody else does, and you also get the updated screening list on a regular basis. These days it's coming out weekly, but it'll calm down when we're not in theaters.
That's great. Well, I already told my daughter on her next day off, she has to find a place to see it with all of her camp friends.
Oh, that's great.
So it's going to be fun.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so cool.
Thank you for joining us. It's great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you.